FBI Director Christopher Wray just issued a record high terror threat in the U.S., where he says blinking lights are everywhere. So currently we are in a level red terror threat in the U.S., and a lot of this has to do with the anti-Semitic and also Islamophobic sentiment that's happening, likely due to following the Israel-Hamas war. Now, I want to go into the details of how this affects your personal safety, but also how it may have implications in the market, your stock holding, and things that you might be worried about in terms of losing their value if there is an actual terror threat. But before we dive into that, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button to show your support, but more importantly, stay updated on topics like this. All right, so what's going on with this FBI warning? Well, the FBI warning was just issued, and we're actually still seeing more threats, even towards schools, letters going out towards certain districts and cities, none of which have been validated as real, and we actually haven't had any major actual threats yet. But I think it's important to know that the amount of warnings that are happening are very similar to right before the September 11th attack that happened in 2001. And obviously, there's a lot going on with the Israel-Hamas war, and a lot of this anti-Semitic threats, but also Islamophobic threats are really happening on, I don't know if it's equal, but they're definitely happening and escalating on both sides. And it's creating a lot of uncertainty around both the security and safety in our country, specifically for the FBI, but also as someone who's traded and someone who was financially impacted by the attack in 2001, I think it's important to note what could happen, what was going on. So if we go back, just try to remember where you were and what was going on in September 11th, 2001. We can all remember the day, right? What was going on, where I was. I was personally at work. I remember at the time I was a young kid laying wood floors, and there was this thing that came on the radio. It was there was this terror attack happening in New York. And it was kind of hard to believe. There's this almost moment of denial. And after a couple hours of talking to other people, hearing it on multiple networks, and then turning on the TV to see what was going on, it was like the world stood still. And as the world stood still, there was multiple things, multiple dominoes that were pushed, whether intentionally or not, that would fall after that attack. And one of those dominoes impacted the market. Now rewind to that spring, September to spring, there was actually a lot going on in the market, specifically around tech. And if you recall, tech was just having its major boom. In fact, they were calling it the tech boom the year before, where things like AOL and the .com were going through the roof. And after the spring hitting its all-time high, things started to settle. We started to figure out, as the tide went out, really who had their pants down. And things like AOL we didn't need anymore. There was all these .coms that sold for millions of dollars that never even got used. And we really started to see, where is the actual value versus where is the sentiment and our perception or perceived value. And a lot of that got cleaned up. Well, after the terror attack, it actually escalated the problem. So maybe it sped it up more. Maybe it overcorrected a little bit, but the .com bust got escalated by this act of terror, and we saw things in the tech sector drop even harder, along with other markets, but specifically tech. Now, I would compare both what happened in the market, but also safety was a major concern. And if you recall, what markets were impacted the most, it was the areas that were directly impacted by the attack. For example, travel. The travel industry took an enormous dive because people didn't want to go places. People didn't want to hop on a plane with the potential threat of it being taken over. We saw major declines in airline stocks. We saw major declines in the travel industry. We saw major declines in event centers. Because of our heightened awareness around safety, we started seeing places where we gathered as not safe places, and that the cost that we'd have to put in place to make these things safe were going to drive profits down. And so the market reacted to that. And you have to recall also that during that time, we did not have cell phones in our pocket. This was not, in fact, to have a cell phone at that time was pretty rare. And we were still communicating and listening to most of our news via radio and the television. And so people reacted as quickly as they could, but the stock market took a day or two to really react to this market crash. And Wall Street obviously took its impact, but the retail trader, the average trader like you and I, didn't hit it until about 24 hours later. And by that time, it was almost too late. The market had already dropped. Well, imagine what would happen this time. Let's cross our fingers we don't have any type of a terror attack, but in preparation for one, with everyone having their cell phones, with companies like Robinhood, where you can have direct access through a cell phone using cellular waves to place and exit your trade. Imagine the exodus and the market that would happen if there was a real threat, and how fast the sentiment in this country would change and how quickly people would withdraw and pull their money out of the market. Now, 2008, that happened, and we actually shut the market down. We haven't seen that since the Great Depression, but it is possible that we could see something like this. And if I were to guess, there's probably going to be multiple things that would happen if there was some type of terror attack. And to protect your portfolio or anything you might have investments in, you want to make sure that if there's something like this that happened, that anything that has a string, any type of network effect to any type of asset class or any type of market that you might be in, you want to make sure that that has no contact with that area of terror. In the case of September 11th, the airlines, travel, mass gatherings, it made a lot of sense that those industries would suffer. And there were actually, and I'm not saying for good or for worse, but there were actually a lot of people that made a lot of money shorting those stocks and shorting that market. Now, is that a possibility again? Absolutely. I'm not a huge fan of making money on terror. However, it could happen. But more importantly, it's more about protecting yourself and maybe getting out of assets that are going to further decline based on some type of terror attack. And frankly, guys, that's what terror is all about. Terror is all about creating fear. And if you can create fear and loss in the hearts of whoever it is you're trying to threaten, that's a win to the terrorist. And so to have declines in the market is a huge win for a terrorist or someone that's trying to create terror. So you just need to be aware of what is the motivation also. It's not just to create headlines, it's actually to create fear. And often when these extremists on both sides, both from a Islamophobic side, but also an anti-Semitic side, when these extremists get so extreme, they know no bound. And so we really need to keep an eye on the what. So this is not something that you can take lightly. This is not something that you can go into the market and check up on weekly. If this is the first time you heard about this FBI director warning, that would be a big problem because it's already happened, right? You want to make sure that you're staying up to date on this, and that's why I do this channel. So again, guys, make sure that you hit that like and subscribe button. That will keep you at the top of my feed, that will keep me at the top of your feed, and will keep you updated on things like this so that you can stay safe and you can keep your portfolio and your investments protected. Well, that is it on the FBI Director's report and issued warning on terror in the U.S. Until next time, you guys stay safe out there, and we'll keep your pulse and the market pulse here at Market Pulse. I'm Matthew Pulse signing off. Thank you.